responsible for two things. Number one is the ratings of countries, so the sovereigns themselves, and number two, the ratings of supranational institutions, so the kinds of institutions we've been talking about. So international financial institutions, multilateral development banks. And I can tell you that the world of sovereigns doesn't really change very much in the sense that the world is not inventing new countries very often, but the world is clearly inventing new international financial institutions on a fairly regular basis. So it is a growing part of the business. So this is something, there's definitely an appeal to this model, whether it works or not, we can discuss, but it's certainly something that has caught the attention of a number of governments, and it has been growing and expected to continue to grow. So there's definitely interest in it. Which leads me to another point, which is I think part of that interest on the part of governments to look at this kind of model is based on the desire to leverage off of government balance sheets indirectly. So not to put government balance sheets on the line and to incur some of these expenses directly, but to create other institutions that can do it for them, which is interesting. But one of the things we sort of think about is as the number of these institutions grow, can everyone really be a preferred creditor? Is everyone going to end up at the top of the food chain when it comes to debt repayment capacity? I think that is at least part of the motivation for countries to put together institutions along these lines. I guess maybe third point, and then I'll come back to the direct question, which is the European question. Third point would really be of the ones that we see, which ones look to be the most successful, and I think that would be the ones that have a specific, focused mandate. And in this part of the world, I would point you in the direction of the AIIB, which clearly has an infrastructure investments written right into the name of the institution. These ones, from our perspective, are probably, although it's not necessarily built into the rating as such, but probably ones that are more successful. If you come back to the question on Europe, is Europe a good model for other regions? Well, yes and no. I think Europe is struggling with Europe's model. There's disagreement inside Europe on whether the solution to Europe's problems is more Europe or less Europe. And I think the countries that are members of the European Union have different views on this. This is really at the core of the debate within the region now, and we saw the UK deciding that that's a country that wanted less Europe and has started a very sort of disruptive process of exiting Europe. So I don't think it's necessarily a one-way street in that sense. So I think if that's a problem and a challenge that advanced economies that are relatively similar in terms of levels of development can't resolve, I think it's very difficult for other regions to use that as a model. And I guess one of the other regions that sometimes in the past has looked at Europe as a model is that ASEAN region, so the countries in Southeast Asia. And there, if you look at the track record of ASEAN as a model, and them in turn looking at Europe, they've run into some fundamental problems which we heard about a little bit earlier indirectly, which is different levels of development. You've got Singapore and countries like Myanmar and Laos, very different levels of development in these countries. So it makes it all the more challenging to have a region-wide development initiative or to think about institutions that can service all of those different countries at different levels of development. Countries' commitment to the institutions change, and as a result of that, ASEAN often gets accused of being a great talking shop, but how much does it actually accomplish? And I think part of that challenge is just at different levels of development, it's difficult for countries to commit to more integration as Europe has already found at a higher level of development. So maybe I'll leave it there.